I'm Joe Vasquez, and welcome back to the Null Space. I need to have more ideas, and I think to have more ideas, I'm going to have to systematically learn how to get exposure to the world around me. And I'm going to need to get exposure to different environments, different experiences, more ideas, so that I can combine all of those and have a better chance of finding something to invent. Obviously, all of these things are going to be rooted in trying to find a problem and trying to find some sort of direction to find a worthy idea. So this video is really about me trying to fill up as many journals as I can as I get exposure to as many things as I can, as well as what kind of goal I can set for myself that will help me get exposure to more things. So I have a goal this year by the end of 2025 to fill up one of the shelves from these bookshelves behind me with nothing but inventive journals and documentation and research on a particular project. Why make that goal? And I think that goal of filling these sketchbooks is a good objective metric for me that really tells me whether I'm actually living out the life of an inventor, whether I'm actually trying to develop those characteristics and those skills that inventors need, working on becoming more open-minded and observant and curious, and working to learn as much as possible about different fields and gaining a broad education. Really just like living in the world of ideas and making sure that I'm actually in that headspace and really in that space all the time, to where I'm generating these ideas and thinking about different things. Those journals are just my objective metric for that. I can visually see them growing and changing, and adding different journals, increasing the amount of journals that I actually fill up. So trying to fill one of these journals, how am I going to do this? One of the first things I do is read. I read a lot more than I used to. I read anything and everything. I read systematically. I make notes of the things that I read. And I know a lot of you don't like to read. Some of you struggle like actually sitting down and going through a physical book. You rather learn things through documentaries and Netflix specials and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong in like going to the internet and looking at YouTube videos about and learning about things through those YouTube videos. But books give you an added benefit other than the information that you learn. Books are just people's ideas. They're ideas made and packaged in a framework, and this framework is just as valuable as the information you're actually getting from the book. From that framework, you really get to see more clearly how people put their ideas together. You start to think like these people, and that's the biggest benefit you can get from books, is you start to see that framework and you start to experience the world through their eyes. As I try to think about the things that I would like to invent and think about the industries that I would like to get into, one of those is climate change. And climate change is obviously a problem. I see the industry changing drastically. I think like maybe this might be an industry I might get into as an inventor and try to put my 2 cents, like give my 2 cents to that industry. So I picked up this book on how to avoid a climate disaster by Bill Gates. And I mean, there's so much information in this book, but the most important part that's related to this video is that I now see climate change through the framework of the book, through the framework of how he lays out the things that he sees. And the first 3 chapters are like why we need to worry about how we produce energy and how that relates to the changes in climate, how hard it would be, like the actual challenge, the scope and the magnitude of the challenge, and how to have conversations with other experts and what questions you should ask and you should know about when you're trying to figure out what this problem really is. But the next 5 chapters after that are related to how we get our energy. So how we make things, how we grow things, how we stay warm, how we get around, and how we plug in and get electricity. I now see the energy problem through those 5 different activities, human activities. And that's a framework that I've received from reading this book. So it's not just the information. I now get a glimpse of how Bill Gates sees this problem. And that's huge. If you read other books about the energy crisis and how we're going to get energy, especially for AI. Like you want that framework as well. You want to see the way they see the world. In addition to reading books and YouTube channels, I read a lot of textbooks. This is remnants from like my college life, and I'm very comfortable reading textbooks. I'm not shy about reading textbooks and really getting into the details of how things work. So textbooks are one of the things I use to get exposure. I try not to get into the detail too much right now, but I don't want it to be a shallow education, but I still want it to be broad. And as I'm looking at what to invent, it's good to just get anything from everything. So I'm reading a lot of books. I pretty much do that every morning. I'm reading maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, just dedicated to reading about pretty much anything that I can get my hands on. So that's reading, right? Now, I also watch YouTube channels, but not for the process of entertainment, but just for educational purposes. YouTube has come a long way in giving us information and being a good place to do research and get exposure to many different ideas. I have YouTube channels specifically for this kind of exposure therapy that I like to call. And I call them like awareness channels because I'm just using them as a learning tool to gather information about the things that I'm thinking about or where my mind leads. Lately, I've been watching YouTube videos about biomimicry and how engineers are trying to tap into how nature has formed things. Engineers are kind of tapping into all of that and trying to mimic what nature does so that they can build things way more efficiently. So I've never thought about really studying biology, but now I'm getting into life sciences a little bit more, and that's a completely new direction. I think I have about like 60 channels, 60 different YouTube channels related to just me gathering information or looking at engineering problems and how engineers solve particular problems, how things are made, anything and everything. Lots of science channels, lots of discovery channels looking at just how animals behave, anything that I think will give me inspiration to have more inventive ideas. One of my favorite YouTube channels though is called Undecided with Matt Ferrell, and he basically talks about upcoming technology that may help the energy crisis. He really goes into detail about what the technology is and how it impacts the world and the pros and cons, and it's a fascinating channel, and I think it's a real big inspiration because it's new technology. It helps me really think about old technology and how it can be changed to fit new situations. That's huge for me. I think that's a very valuable thing that will help me become a better inventor. Finally, documentaries and Netflix specials. It's bittersweet with Netflix because the things that they talk about are way more they're easier to digest and they increase awareness, but at the end of the day, a documentary doesn't really tell you about much. You just you learn of the thing, but you don't learn about the thing itself. And that's why you need books. Books will flesh out exactly how things work, just like news channels. News channels don't tell you why that happened. They just tell you what happened. And that's not enough. You need to understand the why and the how. Right now, getting exposure takes up a big chunk of my time. I think I dedicate maybe like 5 hours to constantly looking at things and constantly trying to do research and get a broad education. With all that said, it's only a matter of time before I actually find something. I find a diamond in the rough, and it's hard to gauge whether something is really special and unique versus just another kind of crazy idea that you have that may or may not work. So if you're interested in my journey as I try to fill up these sketchbooks with ideas and the journey of becoming an inventor, and more importantly, if you find any value in the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm talking about, please like and subscribe so that I can continue to make these videos and so that YouTube can maybe one day help me in becoming a better inventor and give me resources to make things that matter and help change situations and circumstances for other people. Thank you.